Now in this video, I'd like to clarify a couple of things regarding how we understand and interpret statistical evidence. I call this a stat correction for all my sports fans out there. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard the phrase correlation does not equal causation, and I think this is often misused as a way to dismiss or derogate correlational evidence, as if to suggest that the only evidence we can ever truly rely on is experimental. And I don't think that's very wise. I think correlations themselves are very important and meaningful, even if we don't have a causal framework. Now, there's lots of different types of correlations out there. And I think one of the reasons why people are skeptical about correlations is because sometimes we observe them by chance. So here are some funny examples that I pulled from some websites online. This is a correlation showing the number of people who drowned by falling into a pool correlates with films Nicolas Cage appeared in, and per capita cheese consumption correlates with the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bedsheets. Now, these are what we call spurious correlations. They likely emerged by chance, and we shouldn't take them very seriously. That's different from robust correlations. Robust correlations are very meaningful. They typically emerge again and again and again in studies, and that means we can rely on that finding even if we don't have a causal framework necessarily. So, what about something like smoking and lung disease? This is likely not a spurious correlation. However, there is no scientific study where some people are randomly assigned to smoke cigarettes while others are assigned to a control group, and then we follow up and see what happens to them in terms of their health. That would be egregiously unethical, not to mention probably logistically impossible to do. So, because we don't have any experimental studies linking cigarette smoking with lung disease, we would likely still take that correlation seriously, but we would give it different language. We wouldn't say smoking causes lung disease. We would call it a significant risk factor or predictor. Part of the reason why we cannot conclude a causal association based on correlational evidence is because we don't know which direction the causal framework is. We don't know whether X causes Y or whether Y causes X, which we sometimes refer to as reverse causality, or whether they both cause each other, that was what we would call bidirectional causality, or whether there's some hidden third variable Z that might be causing X and Y at the same time, which we call a third variable causation. I'll give you an example of reverse causality here, and this comes from research on depression and social media. There's been a lot of discussion about this, especially in the news and in current events. The conventional wisdom is that social media makes people less happy, especially teenagers, but I would like to seriously question that idea based on some evidence that has emerged from psychology research over the past few years. And here we have an example of reverse causality. Basically, some studies have shown a correlation between social media use and clinical depression. And this is a summary of research from an article on SciPost. Using social media does not predict the onset of depression, research finds. The conclusion contradicts previous studies claiming that social media use causes depression. The study, unlike previous investigations, followed people for up to 6 years to see which came first, social media use or depression. The results showed that heavier social media users did not become more depressed later on. However, one group of young people, adolescent girls, who were already depressed did end up using social media more. This suggests social media use does not cause depression, but could be a way of dealing with it, whether successful or not. Ms. Taylor-Heffer, the study's first author, said, "This finding contrasts with the idea that people who use a lot of social media become more depressed over time. Instead, adolescent girls who are feeling down may turn to social media to try to make themselves feel better."